Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stakeholder Whispering Live. My name is Bill Shander, and I'm here every week, here or there. We sort of take a week off every now and then, and here to talk about Stakeholder Whispering. Not the book, although that is the title of the book that I wrote that came out earlier this year, but the idea of Stakeholder Whispering. And the basic gist of it, as I talk about in the book, is that as the tagline says, uncover what people need before doing what they ask, because our stakeholders often don't know what they need, and our job is to help them figure it out and then do that, which may or may not be the same thing that they asked you for. It might be sometimes, but often it is. But we're not here to talk about the book. We're not here to talk about me. We're really here to talk, usually always, about my wonderful guests. And today we have an extra special guest. We have Mico Yuk with me. Mico is, like me, a data storyteller and an educator and a wonderful person. We talked before, and I'm really happy to have her here. Miko, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me back. I was excited to be on your data visualization series on LinkedIn. So thank you for having me again.
Of course. And before we get jumping into your anecdotes, maybe you can give everyone a little bit more complete introduction. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I won't bore them. So I've been around the data world for almost 12 years now, past a decade. Knock on wood, I'm getting old. And I'm well known for my data storytelling framework. I've had the pleasure of training over 20,000 students, probably more at this stage across the world. Bill, I've keynoted everywhere from MIT to Google to Facebook. I also have been a data commentator on radio stations like MSNBC and CNBC. I'm a fellow LinkedIn learning person, but most of all, I'm just obsessed with the neuroscience around data storytelling. I'm just obsessed. I mean, I was both a consultant and also an employee, and I've built teams globally across the world, and I've been obsessed with data. That's what people know me for. So I'm both a trainer, keynote speaker, but me and your passion around storytelling, the neuroscience around it, your book, which I think is amazing, which is getting into the psychology of how to really manage your stakeholders. That's the true passion.
Cool. Well, we're in the right place then. So, I know you came armed with some stories, and I know you have maybe some successes and maybe some failures. I don't want to give anything away. What did you want to start us off with here today?
Well, it's interesting because as I read the book Stakeholder Whispering, Bill, I have to say that the first thing I asked is like, where was this when I was getting started? Right? Where was
Yeah.
this when I was getting my butt handed to me in New York City? Like, where was this? Like, this is an beginner dream, right? And these were
Yeah.
the books that I needed but couldn't find. So, I when I started to read the book, I started to think to myself about this time. So I started my career in New York, Manhattan, probably a place that almost everybody watching knows. I was very young. I'd come from the Caribbean just a few years back. I went to university in the United States, and I was excited, like every kid that's young 20s, to be in New York, right? Manhattan. Well, let me tell you, I worked for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world in Manhattan. And the first week of my role, Bill, I was working with these VPs on a huge research project, right? So I was the dashboard chick, and I got my butt handed to me. I mean, I got my butt. New York is not for the weak. Can we agree with that? You're from the Northeast. It's not for the weak, right? So
Yeah,
here
this is
I
true.
come from the Caribbean with my manners, and I'm kind of like calm, and I'm living in Georgia. So it's like Southern hospitality. And then I get to New York, and they open it. This is a kid's show, but they open it up with like, how the F is everybody doing at 8 a.m. in the morning? And I'm like, right? Then they proceeded to think I was the water girl. So that was very fun. And they asked me, where's this Miko guy? And so I said, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab the water and I will find a Miko guy for you. So then I got the water, I took my time and I came back and said, all right, let's get started. That's for a whole different story. But let's just say these are my stakeholders, and that is how my second meeting started with the VPs.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't realize it was your first week in, A, and B, as I think about that story,
Yeah.
that was a pretty ballsy move to be like, I'm gonna go get the water, and then
Yeah.
and then you came back and be like, by the way, I am Miko. Let's get started. Like that's a pretty, that's a power move right there. So good for you.
Well, there were two
Um,
stakeholders that knew who I were, and they literally were like horrified. And I was like, you know what? Let's
yeah,
play chess.
yeah,
Right? Let's not react. Let's not, I was the only girl in this room. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go ahead and move on. And actually it was a great meeting. God help that VP. He's a good friend now. But
yeah,
yeah, he promised me, he vowed never again to judge. He
yeah.
vowed,
That's
and
great.
he also vowed, we have a joke now. I said, do you go grab your own water now?
Yeah.
But yeah, I started my career. I didn't have the luxury bill of, starting out. I started out on the chairman and senior executive level. And I'm not gonna lie, I'll say this on camera and I cringe while saying this. I probably cried for like the first 6 months of my career in New York. I
Yeah.
went home to my hotel room and I just cried.
Yeah. And why was that? Like, what kinds of things were happening aside from the water girl incident? What kinds of things were happening in these meetings that were so difficult, other than, New Yorkers have a certain type of personality, not to
Yeah,
generalize.
besides the personality, it was just all over the place, right? I was a great dashboard designer. I could design whatever you wanted and make the data pop, but the requirements were all over the place. In the first 5 minutes, we went from like, oh, I want to see this to, oh, Miko, pull it up. Oh, change that chart. We want gauges or we want this graph to, oh, let me pull up my spreadsheet. And by the time we're done, nobody has time left. And it's an
Yeah.
hour and my list of questions are sitting there. So
Yeah.
I'm going, and then the next meeting we expect to see changes, and I'm thinking changes on what?
Right.
So for my own sanity, I started walking with a tape recorder, and that
Yeah.
actually saved my life.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that so these meetings were going off the rails. Everyone's demanding this, that, and the other, but there's no cohesion. There's no like, all right, here's what we should be doing. It was more just everyone's just throwing ideas at you, and you're just supposed to capture it all and run off and do it.
I
Is
didn't
that?
know to control the conversation, right? Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, when I go back, I realized that one, I was asking these open-ended, crazy questions, right? Because I was scared anyway. I asked them questions like, okay, guys, good morning. So let's start over again and tell me, like, what are you guys trying to achieve?
Right.
Well, I'm dealing with VPs, EVPs. Everybody has an agenda this long, right? So just
Yeah.
talk about the onslaught. We're 30 minutes in and I'm still hearing about what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
So just no control of the room, combined with all the dynamics, right? I'm the only girl in sight on like an 18 floor building. Not to exaggerate, but seriously, I didn't see any women. I'm just being very
Yeah.
honest. And here I am trying to get this stuff done. And it's just like these guys are like, everything was due yesterday,
Yeah.
but I couldn't even
That's
get in the requirements.
yeah. And so at what point did you shift? At what point did you start to realize this and start to get control of the conversations? Was it at that job or was it somewhere else?
No, it's at this job. I was blessed with two amazing mentors. One lives in Boston and one in Rhode Island. And I actually call them crying. I go back to this. It's not a joke. I went home to my hotel room in Manhattan. I was there on 42nd and second, and I cried. And so they listened to me crying. They're like, "Are we done yet?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is not very nice."
Yeah.
And long story short, they kind of said, "All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're going in with a game plan, and you have those recordings. You're gonna listen to them. You're gonna understand them, and you're gonna come in and start controlling the room." They also, one of my mentors also took the train down from Boston to New York, handed me three books, and I recommend these books to everybody as well, including your book. I wish that's why I said I wish I had your book because they gave me emotional quotient 2.0. Let's Get
Yeah.
Real, Let's Not Play by Mahan Khalsa, and another book, none of which were data books, just so you
Right.
understand, right? They're all like about your EQ, they're about sales. And essentially, they told me, read these on the way home because I was flying back and forth from Atlanta every weekend. And
Mhm.
I read it 3 times. And I said, all right, I don't know what else to do. So I'm just going to try this. And within 2 months, we were able to get, it was a $20 million account that we were fighting for. And we were able to get the account. And as I said, those VPs are my friends now because they realized like there was a joke that was like, oh, Miko's in the house.
Right.
Because it was like, I didn't scream or anything, but the motion changed, and they're like, all right, she means business. That was the term. She means business. And I was like, guys, I only get 30 minutes with you. I gotta be on the train in 20 minutes down to Groton. We gotta get this done.
Yeah. Right.
So it was just a different tone. But when I tell you I cried, I mean, I hate to keep saying it. I'm so embarrassed to say
Yeah. No, listen,
it.
I think we've all been there. I think those are key moments. And like you
Yeah.
said, it usually happens earlier in your career. But I know people are struggling with this 20 years into their career. It's really hard. And, as
Yeah.
someone dropped in the comments here, managing up and sideways in this case, it's difficult. It's really hard to do. And especially when you have certain personalities. There's a chapter in the book where I talk about the trouble you're going to run into, the key
Yes.
characters you're going to run into, like the passive aggressive stakeholder or whatever.
That's
And
right.
some people just aren't whisperable, or they're harder to sort of control, manage, etc.
Game
I don't
face.
know.
They have a game face.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you
Yeah.
had that, those types of people in
Oh
that job
yeah.
or in another job.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I listen, I've done these requirement gathering is what I teach. And actually that experience propelled me to start teaching because I was like, no one else can go through this. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want to joke with you. Look, my armpits. I'm sorry, this is really bad to show. Like when I tell you this experience changed my career,
Yeah.
it petrified me, and I
Yeah.
was like, and then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I can't let anybody else go through this, and that bred an entire company.
Yeah.
And I went through this not just here, I went around the world and experienced the same thing, right? Passive aggressive leaders, super aggressive leaders, those who don't talk, those who are watching their phones the whole time, and
Yeah.
they come in saying, I have a meeting right on the hour.
Right.
Okay, but you're in your
Yeah.
phone the
That's
whole
the key.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right in an hour. Then I go at the end. Okay, guys, just want to level set expectations. When are you guys expecting this? This was due yesterday,
Yeah.
but you're not available for 2 more weeks. Like I'm not. I was gonna put on a shirt saying I'm not Houdini.
Right.
Like so so I think with personalities, what's important and what I started doing differently, and I know you speak about this as well, is being prepared.
Yeah.
I always knew who was in the room. Like I would go through the invite because people tend to invite other people who you didn't
Yeah.
invite. And I would go through and try to do my homework on them. And I'll be honest with you, I literally invested heavily in EQ training, in understanding people versus even data for a while. Because what
Yeah.
I learned is that even the heaviest people, I'd go online and see on LinkedIn back then, I'd see, oh, my kid went to college. And I'm not lying to you, Bill. The hardest person sit on in a room like this the whole time. And I'd be like, Bill, how are you? I think I saw your kid went to Georgetown,
Yeah.
and right away you get a, yeah, he is. You saw that on LinkedIn. I'm like, so I started to
Yeah.
learn techniques to kind of break even the hardest wave,
That's great. Yeah.
right?
EQ.
And
EQ is a big one.
yeah, it's EQ is high, and then also just like tuning into WIFIIFT instead of IIFM. I know you've heard of this, right? When I would
Yeah.
walk in, it used to be what's in it for me. When
Yeah.
I started to learn to focus on what's in it for them,
Yeah.
that changed everything.
Empathy. Yeah. Big
Empathy,
one.
empathy, empathy,
Yeah.
empathy, empathy. Yeah.
So that's great. Disaster stories, they light the fire, they give you so much learning. Do you have any success stories? Any
Yeah.
projects, even just a single meeting where it just went so swimmingly well, even though it seemed like it was about to go off a cliff?
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe you can share one of those.
Yeah, I mean, after a couple years, I got a little bit more polished, thank God. And there was a particular meeting that I went into that I remember that was so good. I was actually working with a couple of stakeholders that were very senior again. We were bidding on a big project, and I was very young, and I underbid this project. This is a very important story. It's about KPIs, right? They needed to figure out the KPIs to save some millions of dollars. I underbidded the project, and in the room, I'm sitting there. There's like four guys that are senior. I remember I was in Texas, and everybody's like smiling. So we take a little break because I flew in for this meeting, so it's kind of like a half day meeting. And one of the executives follows me outside, and he looks at me and says, "Nail the presentation." I went, "Oh, good." He said, "You got one big problem." I went, "What?" He says, "You are too cheap." I looked at him and I went, "What do you mean I'm too cheap? What the hell?" I said, "I can't just go in and be changing numbers." He's like, "We love it, but we can't take it seriously." Long
Wow.
story short, think about that. So I put a price
Yeah.
on the screen, and now he's telling me that you did a great job, but we'll decline it because of that.
Right.
Long story short, it took about two different realms to pull us out of that, but it was one of our most successful projects. I will say I had to go back in with a complete game face, and I had to confess that I was wrong, which was very difficult. That was very difficult, and I said I think we misunderstood the requirements, and I thought they'd throw me out. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And after that, this I tell this story all the time. It's kind of a fun story. Even though I fixed the price, you'll appreciate this, Bill. The CIO at that time was like, "Oh, we have $30 million that we play with for projects like this, so you're fine."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a ride because I did stakeholder both with requirements gathering for our projects, but also I did a lot of selling of deals because I came from the SAP and business objects world. So dealing with stakeholders was my main thing, whether it was selling a deal, gathering requirements for a dashboard, whatever it was. Remember, I was a data
Yeah.
scientist and data analyst. So I started out
Yeah.
from the, that's why I said, where was your book?
Yeah.
What's your
I mean, look, sales is stakeholder management. There's no question about it. In that moment, the project is winning the project. And that project, the sales
yeah,
project, has requirements. You got to make them happy. You got to make them think you're going to provide value. You got to set the right price. And yeah, too cheap
yeah,
is a problem sometimes for a lot of companies. So no question about it. In fact, one of the books that I talk about in my book that I quote a bunch of times is called The Challenger Sale, which has the
yes,
exact same premise as my book. The basic idea is when you're selling complex things, your client, your prospect doesn't know what they need, and so your job as a
that's right.
salesperson is to help them figure it out. More important than pushing the features of whatever it is you're selling. So no question about it.
Yeah, you remind me of Henry Ford, right? He said that if we had asked them what they needed, they would have told us faster horses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Thank God you built the car.
Exactly. I gave a talk last week in Boston, all about stakeholder whispering, the book, and I talk about Henry Ford in there. And by the way, that quote actually isn't true, as I mentioned in the
Ah,
book. He never said that. At least there's no evidence he actually said that. But in my talk, I said, yeah, but even though he may not have said it, certainly the idea of it, and he was a huge success, right? He didn't go in and
yeah,
ask, should we make the horses with longer legs so they can be faster? Should
that's
we make
right.
rainbow colored horses? Maybe we should put cup holders on horses. And of course, I generated an AI image of a horse with a cup holder in the saddle.
Couple. Yeah,
No, he
nice.
moved past that. But what's interesting with Henry Ford is that he also, in addition to being an amazing success, he invented all these new processes and ways of manufacturing and so many things beyond just cars. But he was also a horrific failure. I don't know if you know this, but Henry Ford had, Ford Motor Company had two-thirds of the car market in the United States in 1921. And 6 years later, that market share collapsed. It was only 15%.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
he innovated like crazy, but then he stopped. He stopped asking his stakeholders who were trying to figure out what they actually needed from him and just kept giving him the Model T, the Model T, the Model T. Meanwhile, all his competitors were innovating and coming up with bigger and better ideas. And so, it's interesting, like, sales is stakeholder management, product development is stakeholder, all of it, stakeholder dashboard design. But then you got
Yes.
to keep doing it and you got to keep engaging. Like these meetings you were having at that first company, yeah, they're going to throw more requirements at you and you got to keep going and keep digging and keep figuring out what's really needed behind the scenes.
Well, I
Hard
know
to
it
do.
over time, but I want to share something with you I learned recently because I think you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
I was listening to this podcast because I also studied Henry Ford, and obviously we all studied Tim Jobs, right? Jobs talked about the same thing with the iPhone, which is no one knew they
Yeah.
needed the iPhone until they had the iPhone. But
Yeah.
I heard about a family. Are you familiar with WD-40 for the car?
Hmm. Yep.
They said that WD-40 is one of the most brilliant products, right? All that family wanted to do, and I think they took 1,000+ tries, was create an oil for something to run better. And
Yeah.
since I've been a kid, it has never changed from that yellow and blue can
Yeah.
or whatever color it is.
That's it.
And they said, so they're like this quiet, they're one of those people that decided, you know what, we built it and we don't need to innovate ever again, right?
Yeah.
And nonetheless, we all need WD-40, right? When a door creaks, even though we've never heard, they don't advertise or anything, but when something creaks, what do you go for? Oh, I need a damn WD-40.
Yeah.
The door is creaking. Oh, the car. So
Yeah.
it's interesting with innovation because some people get away with it by doing one thing well, similar to Rolex, right?
Yeah.
Rolex produces one thing really well. And then
That's
Porsche is
true.
a good example. Porsche just went into the EV world after being in a luxury vehicle world. They wanted to compete and now they're having problems. So I think with innovation, as people go, there has to be a strong balance between, what are you either do one thing well, and if you keep innovating, make sure that you're growing and doing it properly. Sorry, I had to bring that up because I
Yeah.
was fascinated by WD-40.
Yeah, and I think it's a great story, and there's a really important lesson there, as you said. I mean, it's like, yeah, sometimes it's the right niche, the simple thing, or maybe
Yeah.
you just do it so well that like
Yes.
it is perfect, and so why bother? And it's a good lesson too, because like that's a perfect example of a company that could have, oh yeah, we'll make
Yes.
47 new products every month, and
Yep.
and most of them are going to suck, and everyone's going to hate us, and eventually the brand gets so diluted that they forget about the WD-40 that actually
10
was the critical.
oils, oil for the glass, oil for the door, oil for, yeah, they could, they're in
Yeah,
everybody's car and doorknobs, right? So you could start producing doorknobs, to be honest.
yeah,
Here's a pre-oil doorknob.
right.
Like it'll never creak in 50 years, right?
That's
But
it.
no, it's I think what's important though, and I know we're over time and I want to end with this, is I think I wish your book was around. It's one of those books where I feel like every team, every junior analyst that comes in, every new analyst, even senior people, right, still struggle with this. Look how nervous I am, even telling the stories again. That's to tell you the impact
Yeah,
it had. Should read this end to end. And I think what I like about it too is just your writing style. It's very relatable. You know, it's not academic. I feel like you speak, I feel like I'm talking to you. And I
yeah.
really
Thank you.
appreciate you did it that way because when you're dealing with stakeholders, you know, I think it's Joseph Motley or Scott Motley said you have to treat the discussion as a enlarging conversation and not a performance in order to
Right.
perform, right? In order to succeed. So I like that your tone of your book did that. And it wasn't like someone speaking, you weren't speaking at me, you're speaking to me. So I recommend that
Yeah.
everybody pick it up. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate you saying that. It's very kind, and also
Yes,
I
good
really
book.
appreciate you being here and sharing your experience with everybody.
Sorry about the armpit, guys, but you know, he wanted to bring it up, and I'm nervous. I've been nervous for like an hour, so I hope you guys appreciate the authenticity.
Well, thank you for living through the nervousness and the cold sweats. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, and everybody else, thank you for being here. And I don't think I'm going to be here next week, but I will see you the week after probably. Take care, everybody.
Yay! Bye, guys. Thanks, Bill.